Today has been a bad day. A very, very bad day. But we are pulling through, and I'm gonna do what makes me the most happy to try and make this day better, which is film the rest of the content for the week that I have to upload. So, my day is always better when it's spent with you guys. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of everything spooky. So sometimes, like today, I'll read stories that you guys send to me that are absolute nightmare fuel. Sometimes I will share my own nightmare stories. We'll talk about scary movies, legends, folklore. It is a great time here. And if any of that sounds really cool to you, I'd love to have you. I am also on YouTube, obviously, Instagram, Patreon, and TikTok. All of those links will be below. And if you want to send me any stories, please send them to the email below and just put YouTube in the subject line so I know where to read it. But without further ado, let's get into these stories. My name is Casey, and I've been listening to your videos and following your TikTok for a while, and I love your content. I finally figured out how to find your email to send you some of my experiences. I do have a couple of stories that start from me being a year old to present time. The first story. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal even as a child and baby. My grandfather used to have a VHS tape of me being in one of those walkers with heels for babies, sitting in the living room in front of the TV, and in one of those videos you can hear me laughing, and he came to check on me. What he saw prompted him to grab the camcorder. I was sitting in front of the TV, and for some reason I forget. He told me, but I've forgotten what, but we had balloons in the living room. One in particular is what was making me laugh. In the video, you can see a balloon float around me, go behind the TV. This is the early 90s, so TVs were big and bulky. And then it comes back out on the other side and floats back to me. This went on for a little bit until my grandfather called out to my mother. When he spoke, the balloon darted right towards me and popped in my face, and I began to scream. I believe that situation is why I'm terrified of balloons, or more so the action of them popping. It was the one and only time that he saw anything or caught it on camera that I'm aware of. Were you playing with Pennywise? I've grown up in California my whole life, and this has been home to me. When I was between the ages of 9 and 13, my parents moved us out to a town called Placerville. We moved out to a 10-acre parcel that was owned by some interesting people, but they were selling it pretty quick and my parents got the property. I don't remember much of them, but I remember one of the guys scaring me tremendously. He had a scary look about him, and nothing about him felt right. A year or so after moving onto the property, weird things began. I was 11 at this time, and I remember I had a friend come up and stay the summer with us, and one night when we were sleeping, she had woken me up smelling bacon. Mind you, when I woke up, it was pitch black and I had a fan in my room, so I opened my window half asleep and put the fan out facing the window to get the smoke out. And then we went back to sleep, or tried to. She ended up falling back asleep and I had to go to the bathroom, so I got out of bed. Walking to my bedroom door, all of a sudden, a black mass fell from the ceiling and landed right in front of me with such force that I fell back and landed on my butt. It stood as tall from floor to ceiling. It just stood there and blocked the entire doorway, and the bathroom light was on in our hallway, so there was light that came through our bedroom door. But with whatever this mass was, it blocked all lights coming into my room. All you could see was this figure, with the light going around it, like lining this figure. I sat there and squeezed my eyes closed in fear that something was going to happen to me, but I opened my eyes and it was gone. I then proceeded to use the bathroom, and I went into the bathroom with the bathroom door open to keep a light on for my younger siblings. The bathroom light was used as a nightlight for both rooms. I was using the restroom when all of a sudden there was a deep breathing, almost growl while I was in the bathroom. The breathing sound kept coming closer and closer, and I wasn't sure if it was my father at the time, and I called out to Dad. But there was nothing, and the sound got heavy breathing. It freaked me out. I screamed for my mom and it disappeared. I tried to explain to my mom about the man-looking black mass that fell from my ceiling and the deep breathing, but she told me that I must have just imagined it because I was still half asleep. I even asked her if there was any bacon left, and she laughed at me, telling me no, since it was a little after 2 in the morning. She had not been cooking. After she calmed me down, I went back to my room, covered my head with my blanket, and fell asleep. I still don't know what that was to this day, but it has lived rent-free inside of my mind ever since. Other things had happened on that property, but not so much as paranormal. But I do remember swinging on a swing and feeling like someone was watching me. It didn't feel like a light feeling either, like someone was staring me down. I'd pretend to talk to myself like someone was near and I wasn't alone, but that feeling didn't stop. I would even go for a walk in the forest on the acres and feel like something was following. I knew to be aware of my surroundings because of mountain lions and bears, but this feeling was different. I had a local boy who was a friend of mine mention how he felt uncomfortable by himself there, like someone was there watching, but we never saw anything looking through the trees. I didn't know then what I know now of looking into the trees. We heard rumors of the people that my parents bought the land from, that they were dangerous, and people said that they believed that they had unalived people here. We thought people were just talking and making up stories until one of our dogs started digging in random spots. Our dog would bring home random hotel keys that he dug up, women's clothing and bras, or men's clothing that had been buried. We moved shortly after it began digging up these things. Our cupboard doors would start slamming on their own, and we started to catch people from the corner of our eyes. But when looking direct on at them, there would be no one there. The feeling of dread, fear, and just this heavy feeling of sadness seemed to always linger on that property. I've never felt anything that intense since. I find myself being able to read or feel certain things about the areas, like if something is off or something feels negative. I've learned to always trust that gut feeling. Their third story. My man Dell and I live in Fulsom, California, and we just recently moved in together. We're renting an apartment in the older part of the city. Folsom is known for having a prison here and a town not too far from where we are now. The place we're renting from used to be an old barracks for the prison guards back in the early 50s, so this place has got some history to it. It kind of gave me weird vibes when we moved in, but we had a friend come over and clean the apartment before we fully moved in. Now we've been here for about 8 months and it's had its moments, especially when I'm home alone. I work part-time and Dell works full-time, so I'm home about 4 hours before he gets home on the days we both have to work. On my days off, he has to work, so we usually don't get a full day to ourselves yet, but at the end of each day, we try to make it the best. Well, back in May, or on my birthday, I started to hear him call out to me in the house. Our spare bedroom has become his hobby/man cave. This is where I would hear babe, and it would come right from that room. We have a 2-bedroom apartment with a backyard here, and I would be out back and I would hear babe. Being in the backyard, I figured I didn't see him come home, and I walk inside saying, "Yes, I didn't know you were coming home early," with no response. So I would go looking for him, and he's nowhere. I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks on me and went to walk back outside, and I would see a man standing outside our window. He would take a step to the side and be gone. He would be in frame at the back door and step towards the window but not be seen. I would freak out, heart racing, walking to the backyard when no one was there. This man had blonde hair, and so does Dell, who also has a darker shade of blonde, so it tripped me out. When he came home from work, I would tell him about it, and he would brush it off, saying I must have been tripping. So I told myself that, and I pushed it aside. Well, about a week or so after that happened, I hear my name being called out, followed by babe from inside again. I slowly walk inside, trying not to freak out, but once again, he's not there. I didn't tell him when Dell came home because I know what I'm hearing, and I don't want to get into an argument about it. Well, in June, Dell had to leave for the weekend and help with the pit crew he's involved in on the race team, so I was here, alone. I was afraid, I'll admit, but I wasn't going to tell him that. The first night he was gone, things were okay. Our cat kept acting weird, but nothing like before. On the second night, though, things went from okay to bad. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when all of a sudden it sounded like our spare door opened. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when all of a sudden it sounds like our spare bedroom doors open. The door sticks, so you can definitely hear it open, but the door was closed. It happened again, but this time it sounded like the door was slammed. I turned up the volume on the TV to drown out the sound and calm myself. Then the cupboards in the kitchen start to do the same thing, like someone was slamming the doors. It starts off slow, then really, really fast for like 20 seconds, and then it stops. I get a call from Dell. He was video calling me and asking me what was wrong. He could tell something was wrong by the look on my face, and I told him what had happened, and he believed me when I was telling him. Of course, nothing happens the entirety of the 2-hour call, but as soon as he gets off the phone, the spare door starts up again. I ended up sleeping with our room light on after having a couple glasses of wine to calm my nerves and put me to sleep. He thankfully came home the third day, and nothing like that happened since. He hasn't been gone like that again, though. A couple of weeks ago, Dell woke me up to say he was hearing someone walk around outside the front of our apartment with heavy boots on and a bunch of keys rattling. We had our bedroom door open, and he laid there listening to it happen again. It did. It sounded like someone's heavy-footed walking around in boots and a key ring full of keys. When I stood up and looked out of the window, nothing was there, but you could still hear whatever it was walking down the path. We believe, I haven't looked into it, but we believe it could be a former prison guard. We think he's just walking his rounds and doing his job as if he were still working at the prison. I should have mentioned too that the original prison here in Fulsom was shut down and a new one was opened. I'm not sure who or what it is, but it definitely has no problem letting itself be heard. Fun fact, one of Johnny Cash's songs is about the Fulsom prison here. That's what I was thinking. I was like, Folsom Prison Blues? Is it the same prison? I was trying to figure that out. At the end of this email, they said they have more experiences, and if I would like to hear them, they would love to share them. Please share them. I would love to hear them. All right, let's read another story. These are not my personal stories, but my parents' stories. I'll start with my mom's personal experience, and I have 3 stories from them. When my mom was very little, I would say around 11, she was in her room when her mom came into her room. Her mom was wearing a white flowy dress with a calm expression. As her mom got closer to her, she slapped her across the face, and her whole demeanor was evil. She later then walked out of the room. My mom, in shock, ran out of the room into the hallway to ask why she had hit her, but she was already gone. At the same time, my mom came out of the room. Her brother came out and said, "Mom, why did you hit me?" They were both very confused, so they go to confront their mom, but their mom wasn't wearing a white flowy dress, but a shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. My dad's story, when he was also very little, he and his family and friends were outside late at night. He was with a group of kids who gathered around telling scary stories. When all of a sudden, a kid from the group screams, "Run!" All of the kids in the group start running away in all sorts of directions. My dad decided to run to his mom, who he saw in the distance. As he got closer to her, she was mad. She slapped him across the face and grabbed his hair. My dad, shocked, decided to get away from her while he walked to a group of adults, and his mom was there, wearing completely different clothes from where she was wearing when she hit him. My dad didn't specify what different clothes she was wearing. I would like to mention that when my parents were little, they were heavily religious, Catholic, and Christian. I'd also like to tell another personal story from my mom's side. As my mom was in her room, she looked up and saw what she thought was the devil. It had horns, hooves, and a horse body from the waist down. It had one hand in the wall leaning on it, and the other hand swinging its tail in a circular motion. I don't recall if it said anything to my mom or not, but regardless, my mom came running out of her room to her mom's room, banging and scratching on the door so much she was bleeding. Alright, story number 3. This event is the most intense paranormal encounter I've ever had, though I don't seek them out. Anything else I've seen or felt was either a deceased relative of mine or someone I was with at the time or an echo of a previous resident. This takes place in central Wisconsin, north of Milwaukee and south of Green Bay. I was either 16 or 17 when the decision was made to move my great aunt and uncle out of their farmhouse and into a single-story ranch on the same property, as my aunt could no longer safely use the stairs. Before I get into what happened that day, I want to take a moment to describe parts of that house relevant to this. The back door had a landing which led down to the basement, straight ahead, and another set of stairs up to the kitchen to the left. This door was the one everyone used, as it opened onto the driveway, a short walk away to the new house. I'd been to this house a handful of times for short visits, which were limited to the main living areas. I don't recall ever feeling uncomfortable, unwanted, or in a danger before. The moving process was the first time I'd ever been upstairs, or in the basement, which is the focus of this story. While the adults were prepping lunch that day, the youngest of the kids, Keith, wanted to go into the basement. Whether that was to explore or play or something else, I don't recall. Ann and I, bored teenagers that we were, went with him. I don't remember what we did down there, nor how much time had passed before I knew something was wrong, nor in what order these things happened. Those details were eclipsed by what I saw and felt. Something was angry. I felt that hit me with icy certainty. I turned to look at the far side of the basement where the furnace stood and saw a woman dressed in black from neck to feet, and a possibly wide snarl contorting her face, and I knew we were unwelcome. More than that, I knew she meant to harm Keith. I turned and forced them both back upstairs, and thought that was the end of it, and we ate and got back to work. I'd been sent over to the new house with a box of jars when I encountered her again. While exiting the kitchen towards the landing, remember this also led to the basement, I was pushed hard. I landed just as hard on that landing, my scream bringing my mother sprinting. And that was it for me. I refused to set foot in that farmhouse ever again and helped unpack what I could at the new house. My shins, knees, and forearms were bruised from the force of that push, enough that I limped for days. I don't know what I encountered beyond it being more than a simple ghost or echo, and I have never been back. I'm unsure whether the old house still stands, as it wasn't in the best shape. Ooh! Okay, I think we can fit in one more story. Recently, I've been experiencing a strange string of events. I've never experienced anything paranormal or otherworldly before the events in this story. I'll include a timeline with dates and times as best as I can recall them. The only one I'm sure of is the last. Everything first began on the evening of Sunday, August 18th at around 11 at night. I'd gone to bed early that night, well, earlier than usual. I hadn't been sleeping well and hoped that would help. I was awoken that night to what I believed to be tapping at my window. It's about 67 inches lengthwise and 44 inches height-wise, a medium-sized window. I got up and woke up my dad, and he claimed that there were fireworks reverberating off of that window and that he'd heard them too. I don't believe it now, but I did at the time, and it seemed entirely plausible. The next day was more normal, and nothing else of significance happened other than more tapping. It persisted around 2 nights out of the week since the first time. I hope it doesn't come back tonight. The next event happened at around 6:40 p.m. on Wednesday, the 25th of August. My mother, brother, and I had to go on a short trail, and the trail was hardly in a forest, more of a large park filled with different plants and animals. The street ran by the trail at some points, but at other points it was just nature and you couldn't hear traffic. It was one of the foresty points where we got to see a coyote. Because of this, we decided to cut the hike short and go through a shortcut that got us to the car sooner, 2.5 miles total, rather than no shortcut and 4.5 miles total. We had taken the shortcut and were back on the main trail which runs by the busy street, so that you can picture the street on the right-hand side, thick brush on the left. I listened to one of your videos while walking. We were maybe 15 minutes from the car. I heard a scream. Naturally, I start running and yelling at my brother to run. My mother and he were already further ahead, maybe 40 feet. I know not to run, and the no you didn't roll, but my fight or flight took over when I heard that scream. He and I ran maybe the entirety of a football field until we realized my mother was not running and turned around to see her standing there laughing. This calmed my brother and me down enough for us to wait for her to catch up. She said it was hilarious because it was a bird. Now I know this is not to be a bird because birds around us don't scream, and I've been on this trail several times and never heard anything like it. It sounded like a deep voice yelling. At this point, however, I did believe her because of course it was still likely a bird and I misheard it. The next event took place on Thursday, September 5th. I was on the same trail except we hadn't made it back before sunset. The sun was setting when we decided to take another shortcut. This time it was my mother, brother, and mom's friend and I. Only my mom's friend and I had heard what I'm about to tell you. The shortcut is different but serves the same purpose. This one goes through the thick brush part of the park, with bush tree things 6 feet tall making some sort of arch and a path 3 feet-ish down the middle. We were walking this part and I purposely was trying to scare my mom's friend, making sort of ghost noises. And it was all fun and games until I heard the same noises echo back. I also heard footsteps off of what would be the shoulder path in the bushes. I pretended I didn't hear anything and kept making the noises so my mom's friend wouldn't acknowledge it. That's all the experiences at this point. So far I've tried to ignore it after my mistake of running. I've made it so nothing can see through my bedroom window using curtains, a sweater, and pillows, anything to block out anything from seeing in. I'll take any advice you can give. I wear a St. Michael pendant around my neck that doesn't seem to be enough though. When I heard this scream, I hadn't been wearing the pendant, but in every other instance I had been. I think that's too many coincidences to carry on as usual. The tapping, the scream, and the same sounds echoed back. My mother's friend confirming the sounds being echoed back once we were in the car, feeling watched during the scream and echoes. I don't know what I've attracted, but I hope it leaves me alone. So yeah, the running definitely probably did not help the situation. My best piece of advice is to wear your pendant if it makes you feel safer. I would also consider putting a vial of salt around your neck so you can keep it with you at all times. You could also use black salt. I would also line the windows and doors of your home or your room with that as well if you can. But first and foremost, I would ignore every single thing. You did good on distracting. Just ignore everything. Never acknowledge it out loud and try to control your anxiety with it. Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.